Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Flute Center of New York. We are doing an interview with Nina Assimakopoulos, and she is the author of The Virtuosic Flutist. She is a very vibrant, passionate, energetic flutist, and we are really glad to have her here today. So welcome and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Lauren. It's good to see you.
And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Lauren Worth, and I am the sheet music manager at Rose Music and the Flute Center of New York. So we are going to be talking about your amazing book today, The Virtuosic Flutist, and I have it right here. Very exciting. And we pulled from the audience a few questions, and one of the most popular ones was, what is your inspiration and what drew you to this book?
Yeah, so I also have a copy here. I have a couple hundred copies.
Yeah.
Actually, since I was really young, I wanted to write a book, and I didn't know what I wanted to write it about, but I knew that I wanted to write a flute book at one point, and so it was really fun to finally say to myself, all right, I think I'm ready to write a book, a method book, and I wanted to create a book that was basically something that I would want to have on the stand while I taught. So something that covered some of the key aspects of my teaching, especially if it were to be with a new student. So the book basically goes over, there's like a section on breathing and intonation and vibrato, tone, color, grounding, and then there are these repertoire excerpts. And I also wanted to create a book that had this aesthetic.
Yeah.
I just got to jump to this because this is kind of a fun thing. But, it took me like 4 months to find this paper. This is like a linen, and I wanted it to have a feel. I wanted it to kind of be floppy. I wanted it to not fall apart. I wanted it to be like really sound in terms of pedagogy. And if anyone were to search for words to describe like how to create vibrato or what the different types of vibrato are, I wanted the book to actually have all of that available. And I also wanted the book to have some really important diagrams. So I included like these in the back. So again, just so as a teacher with the book on the stand, or even as a flutist, there would be access to just like some really solid basic things, and that were well described, fun to do, and also empowered the flutist to further create with the exercises. So that's kind of like, that was the inspiration for the book.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And can you bring us through a few of the different sections within the book?
Sure. So the book is basically in 3 sections. And the first sections is called Skills and Pedagogy. I don't know if you can see them here. And so that section has like these little mini chapters on different topics. So like, how the exercises are organized. I use a system of triangles, which I invented as symbology for something that you would want it to represent. So the exercises and the repertoire studies have these triangles under strategic notes, where you can determine whether when you see a triangle, you want it to represent body alignment or intonation or vibrato. But basically, so it goes through an explanation of the triangles. Then we go through each of those topics that I just mentioned. So there's breathing, and there's an explanation of how the breathing apparatus works, the 4 phases of the breath. Pretty easy to read, very excellently written, and I can say this because I had numerous people read it who were very much specialized in the field, so singers especially. And I just really checked my resources and made sure that what I was putting together was, correct.
Yeah.
And so there were no misconceptions. And intonation, tone, color, grounding, vibrato. I go through a mini chapter on each of those topics. And then the second section is called preliminary exercises, and those are exercises related to each of those topics. I'll just show, for example, the vibrato the vibrato chapter starts off with some basic vibrato exercises, and then it moves to vibrato in quadruplets.
Yeah.
what's actually written out, and then it moves to vibrato in quintuplets, and then full circuit vibrato, then freestyle vibrato, and then there are intonation exercises, tone color exercises, and finally the last section of the book is repertoire studies. So these are like one line, one phrase of some of our most beloved flute excerpts, like here's the Fawn, for example. And then the line is taken and it's transposed into different keys, up and down different registers. And again, they all have like these circle triangle symbols.
Yeah.
And it's hard to kind of pull this up. Those are the 3 sections of the book, and I think it's 63 pages. It was at one point 100 pages.
Wow.
So I had to cut it down, and but there'll also be a volume 2.
Ooh, okay. Do you know when we can expect that to come out?
Well, I don't know. Right now I'm in the middle of a bunch of other things, but I think probably within 3 years, and that one will be primarily focusing on training, like the mentality of performance, training logs, basically a lot of like really good skills and examples of how to, set goals and strategize and actually train and get yourself to realize what your goals are, to realize them in life.
Yeah, I think we need something like that right now on the market. And, flute playing is so much more than just flute playing. There's so much else that goes into it. So to kind of into that and learn how to do that would be great.
Yeah, you have like a really good view of it because of what you do. And I just have to say, I'm so glad that Flute Center of New York started a sheet music department. I think that's really amazing. And your work as like the person who directs it is really important.
Thank you. Well, we're really happy to carry your book, so thank you for that. Yeah, and kind of you mentioned doing a lot of other things, and you're a very active person. Can you talk us through how you think doing other things in your life brings you to the music? So you paint, you hike, you do so many different things, and how does that relate to your music making?
Sure, I love that question, and I know that's a question I get a lot. So, I would say kind of the bottom line of it is if you think of yourself as a bank, like a piggy bank, and if you take too much money out, it's really hard to have access to, and if that money represents energy, creative energy, it's really hard to have access to that energy when you need it to practice or to be creative with your music. If you're draining the bank. And for me, it's just that being outside in nature and breaking away from music itself.
Yeah.
But communing with aspects of music like beauty, right? We have beauty in nature. The energies that are in music, forward music, moving energy, recessive music, moving energy, I don't know, everything that's in music exists in nature. So I feel like it's just really important for me to replenish myself. And I find that when I am doing other activities that are not specifically music related and I come back to my music, I'm ready to go. My bank is full.
Yeah.
I think for me, that's what works. And I recommend it.
Absolutely. And you also do a lot of movement within your playing as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, in terms of movement, a lot of us kind of come into flute playing with some patterns of movement and that can get in the way of our playing. So if we're kind of rocking a certain way or making circles with our music. So eventually there is this sort of time in our growth where we have to maybe look at our movement and ask yourself if it's helpful or if it's hindering what we're trying to produce in terms of, our playing. And so in terms of my perspective of movement and how I work with flutists on it and even with myself, I like to first of all just be aware of what's going on in the body with the body. And if there are any holding patterns or inhibitions in terms of not moving the way the music might want to move. And then move into maybe stripping down some of that and de-learning some of it, and then potentially reconstructing it so that it's more mindful and aware.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases actually has like extended choreography involved, which might be a little bit more of what you're asking
Yeah.
about. Yeah. So in terms of that, about 15 years ago, I had my first experience where I did a piece for flute and dancers.
Okay.
There were 8 dancers, and it was such an amazing experience because I learned so much about playing the flute and about art in general and about how other artists work within their medium. And it felt, it fed my music so much that from that point forward, I decided that I just really wanted to continue developing projects with dancers. So it's basically come up to a pretty high level of involvement. Last year, I did a piece where I was completely, I created I was playing music that I didn't create, but I created the sound. So I was performing and moving completely in choreographed movement with another dancer. So it was a duo dance piece, and the music was not pumped out through loudspeaker. It was created by the flute.
Wow.
It was really difficult and really wonderful in the end, very rewarding. Yeah, so currently I'm working on a project that's the underwater hydrology project. Have you seen any of those posts?
Yeah, I have. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. So the movement is now being taken underwater, and we're working on movement underwater. And then I also submerged the flute a couple of weeks ago, and
How does that work?
It's crazy. Well, first of all, I got the flute from a dumpster. I was going to use it to create a sculpture.
Okay.
And so I had it, and when I put it underwater, it became really heavy, which surprised me. And so I've been kind of dealing with rigging the flute. I decided that I could put fishing line through it, and I could plug it up with some wax and put flotation in it.
Yeah.
And it's been working pretty well. In fact, just today I posted some photos from the project that show the flute suspended in the water.
Wow.
But it's basically a big learning curve and a lot of exploration, which makes it really fun.
Yeah, it looks amazing. Excited to see the final product.
It'll be the whole project will be finished in a year, and that particular piece probably will be done in about 2 months.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing. I'm really curious to know what else is on your music stand and what you're practicing for these days.
Yeah, so lately I've just kind of been enjoying submerging myself in sound. I haven't been reading as much music as I've been just picking the flute up. I don't have any big concerts ahead, so it opens up this great opportunity to just kind of marinate.
Yeah.
And it feels so good. And since I've been very active in water lately in terms of whitewater paddling, learning how to do that, working on the water project, I'm kind of newly obsessed with the concept that our breath is actually water. It's just vapor. And so when I'm working with tone, I'm really like kind of going into the zone where I'm thinking, okay, this is like water. If there were 2 rocks here, how would the water slip out? If there were 2 rocks and a lot of water pressure, what would it be?
Yeah.
So I've been exploring sound with this connection to water. And I've also been working on Ian Clark's Hypnosis, and just a lot of slow pieces. Yeah, just kind of relaxing and doing some warm-ups, but I'm not under any kind of high pressure right now with performances, so it feels really good to just chill out with
enjoy your sound and kind of just feel it all. Yeah. Great. And before we finish, any advice for aspiring flutists that you might
advice?
That's a really odd question, but
I think if I were allowed to give only one piece of advice, it would be just to trust. If you have this desire to become a flute player, and it's like a burning desire, you can really trust the journey, and you should really trust it. It's going to throw you some curveballs. It won't look exactly the way you thought it would. Won't be maybe the exact equation, but if you keep moving forward and you trust and you allow yourself not to move into kind of worry and doubt and fretting and just keep everything trusting and positive that your little like tulip bulb will bloom and become the perfect flower that it needs to be. So like I really believe that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That is some beautiful advice for all of us flutists out there. And thank you for sharing your knowledge, your stories, and most importantly, your book with us. So if you guys want a copy, you can head over to flutesheetmusic.com and search for Virtuosic Flutist. Nina, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.